Welcome to Scrunchy Time. I'm Nicole Hegstead, your fertility advocate. After 6 years of infertility and 3 miscarriages, I decided that I needed to become the advocate for my own body. If you're exhausted from struggling to get pregnant and want to know more about how I can help, check out my website at www.nicolehegstead.com.
And I'm Bridget May, your children's health expert. My son was born with a heart condition that led to 3 open heart surgeries, cath labs, a tracheostomy, and a ventilator. After being fed up with mixed opinions, I became my children's own advocate. If your child's health is lacking, then check out my website at www.bridgetmay.com to find out more how I can help. Put your hair up and pay attention while we discuss today's hottest topics concerning female hormones and healthy kiddos.
We aren't silky.
We aren't crunchy. We're scrunchy.
Hey, all right, guys. We're live on our very first podcast. Yay! Oh my gosh. This is so exciting. It's really nerve-wracking. We're doing a podcast.
I know. Finally.
Finally. This has been in the works for months. And we finally are launching today and really excited. We're going to share our stories with you. Everybody, welcome to Scrunchy Time. We named this podcast Scrunchy Time because in the world of health and crazy and opinions and all of that, you're called a silky mom if you're like, by the book, follow what the doctor says, and just like go along with what we consider normal traditions and all of that. And then you're a scrunchy mom if you're that hippie granola crunching, eating, barefoot, running through the trees kind of mom. And you're scrunchy if you're kind of like right in the middle. And that's where we are, because we totally believe in like running barefoot and hugging trees. And also there's a time and a place to take an antibiotic. So we named it Scrunchy Time. So that is what our podcast is called. So welcome. I'm Bridget May, and with us is Nicole Hegstead. She's another health coach, and we're the best of friends, and we're ready to tackle this, right?
Absolutely. So today our biggest goal is just to go through each of our stories and what really led us to the place that we're at and what brought us to being health coaches. So I guess we could just get started.
Yeah. So why don't you go first and share your story?
Okay. All right. So my husband and I have struggled with infertility for about 6.5 years now. It was kind of one of those things where in the beginning we didn't really want to get pregnant, but we were like naturally avoiding pregnancy. And then of course 6 months goes by and it's like, there's lots of opportunities where we could have gotten pregnant. And then a year goes by and it's like, I'm getting a little worried now. And, then 2 years in, it's like, okay, now I'm definitely worried. And that time just kind of seemed to accumulate as the years went by. And I think it was about 3 years into our marriage that I finally saw my first general practitioner and was just like, we haven't gotten pregnant and I think there's something wrong. So she asked me a couple questions, do you have facial hair? Do you have irregular periods? Things like that. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, I think this is what you have. And she gave me a pamphlet and she said, if you have any questions, let me know. I'd love to do an ultrasound and see what's going on. Could you come back, in an hour and do an ultrasound? And I was like, sure. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is exactly what I wanted. Like, I wanted somebody to do an ultrasound, tell me this is the surgery you need, and boom, we'd be fixed and like on the road, and that is not what happened. So I go out to the car and I pull out the pamphlet that she gave me, and it's a pamphlet for PCOS. And it goes into how I will probably never have children. And of course I'm freaking out because I'm like, you just handed me this like it was no big deal. And what is this? So we go home and for an hour I'm drinking a gallon of water and researching what PCOS is and really just freaking out. And online we find out that no, it's not that bleak. Many women still have children with PCOS, but it's just hard. And they explain the polycystic ovarian syndrome and how you get cysts on your ovaries and all of that. And I realized, okay, that's what the ultrasound is for. That's what we're looking for. and go in for the ultrasound, and I don't have any cysts. And I just get a letter in the mail like a week later that says, you don't have any cysts, but that doesn't mean you don't have PCOS. So I'm like, okay, well, that was enough information for like a year. And it takes me probably 6 months to get in to see my first OBGYN. And he runs a ton of he does two different ultrasounds, one in the cervix, and then actually I think they were both in the cervix, but just really getting in there to take a look at everything. He tells me, nope, nothing's wrong, everything looks fine, we need to start you on Clomid. And I went home and talked to my husband, and I was like, they say Clomid is what we need to do. And David said, my husband, he said, but you're supposed to ovulate naturally. And I'm really happy that he took this approach. It was really cool. But he was like, you're supposed to naturally be doing this, and I don't think we should be making your body do something that it's not naturally doing. We need to find out why it's not doing it and fix that problem. And so we stayed away from Clomid, and just kind of let time go by. I saw a naturopath in there. I saw another OBGYN who also wanted to put me on Clomid. And it wasn't until we moved out to Minnesota several years later, and I was told to see a midwife that was out here by a friend. And every time I went to see this midwife, it was like God was stopping me from seeing her. It was ridiculous. Like, my car actually broke down one time, which never happens to me. She always worked on the days where I worked, so I had to find like coverage to cover for me. And then she ended up canceling on the one time that I had it set up and had a coworker to cover for me. It was just a mess. And so I was talking to a friend at church, and she was like, well, I actually go to my chiropractor. And I was like, for infertility? And she was like, yeah, this chiropractor knows a ton of stuff. So I go out there, and I'm not kidding you, I learned more about bad hormones and toxic estrogens and things like that than I'd ever been told before. Like, things that I should have been told by my OBGYNs. I was like, wow, like, there's this whole other world out here around hormones and how your body all works together. And he put us on a cleanse, and we did really well. We lost some weight. And then life happened as normal. We ended up renovating our kitchen. It was a mess. We did a ton of stuff with our house, a ton of stressful things. And so we kind of fell off the bandwagon with that. And so after that, later in the fall, probably about 9 months later, I was like, well, now I have a totally different schedule. I can go see this midwife that my friend had originally referred me to. So I went and saw the midwife, and she said, I want to do an ultrasound and see what's going on up inside. And so we did an ultrasound, and she determined that my uterine lining was too thin, and that that's why I kept miscarrying. I had 3 miscarriages up until this point. And so she determined that she said her theory was that the uterine lining was not thick enough for the baby to implant, and then I was miscarrying. And then she referred me to another doctor that was closer to me. And I really think she only did it because she kept talking about how far I had to drive. And I kept telling her, I don't care how far I have to drive. Like, I've been told you're the person to see. I'm fine driving this far. But in the end, she was like, I want you to go to this doctor because they're really good. And I told her, I said, I'm fine with that. However, it's very important to me that they address my hormones and that they address it naturally and herbally. I don't want to be on Clomid. I don't want to do any of the, the normal stuff that, like, I don't want to do IVF. I don't want to do any of that. Like, I want everything to be done as naturally as possible. And she said, yes, this is the perfect place for that. And I said, okay, awesome. So I made an appointment with this doctor, and went out to see her. And they said, before you get here, we need to know your insurance. And I had actually just dropped down to part-time at my job, so I didn't have health insurance. And so the lady freaked out on the phone and was like, I don't think we can schedule this with you. And I was like, so now, this was in the middle of Obamacare. And I was like, so now we can't actually see a doctor unless we have health insurance? And she was like, well, no, that's not true. Like, she was like, she just didn't know the procedure, because she was like, I know that's not true, but I don't know what to do now. It was really funny. And I was just like, so this is like way worse than socialism, you know? And it was just kind of like a random thing there, but I was like, are you kidding me? I can't even see a doctor now. Anyway, so we got
You're learning all those new procedures all of a sudden. No, wait, I know this, but I don't know that.
Yes, exactly. It really wasn't my fault. I was just freaking out. Like, what do you mean I can't see a doctor? So, I have money. I can pay. Anyway, so finally I got in touch with the right person. She was like, no, we can schedule this. You're just going to have to pay up front to see the doctor. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, fine. You know, I'll bring money when
That's
I come.
what I expected in the first place.
Exactly. So I get there and they were kind of freaked out too at the front desk. Must have been, like you said, new procedure, like, because they were like, okay, you owe $350 today. And I was like, yeah, I was told that on the phone. Here's my check. So, excuse me. So anyway, went back, saw this gal, and she is like, so what's your story? So I open up, I share everything that I just shared with you with her. And I told her, I said, my only thing is, like, I don't want to do Clomid. And she says, well, sometimes Clomid is the only thing that works. And I was like, I don't care. I don't want to do Clomid, you know? And she kind of goes off on this rant about how amazing Clomid is. And I was like, okay, well, we'll deal with that when we get to the bridge where you're telling me that I need to be on Clomid. And I had told her that the last doctor thought that my uterine lining was too thin. And so we get to the end of the appointment, and she says, okay, so here's what we do. She says, you aren't actually going to see me. You're going to see a nurse practitioner that deals with infertility, but you had to see me in order to get a referral to see her. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't told that on the phone, you know? And like, I'm already a little on edge because it's like, you just sat here for 5 minutes explaining to me why the only thing I don't want to do is the only thing that's going to work for me when you haven't even done anything yet. Mm-hmm. And now I need to actually see somebody else. And it just is like, who am I going to end up with here?
She wasn't listening to you.
What was that?
She wasn't truly listening to you.
Exactly. Just totally like into the paper cutter mill where you've got to match up with exactly what they do to everyone.
Yep.
So they took me out and they handed me a packet and they said, so the way that this works is you fill out this application packet and mail it in, and she will go through it and see if she wants to work with you. And then we'll call you to schedule an appointment with her. And I was like, okay, like, so I just paid $350 to get a packet. That's where my mind's going at this point. I got $350 to put in a packet application that might end up working with me. All right, this sounds legit, right? And this is like at a clinic. So it's not like it's like I'm being scammed or anything. It's like at a clinic, but I just never heard of this happening before. And so I go out to the car, and of course, I'm just so frustrated. And actually, Bridget, I always tell the story. My friend called me. Bridget's the one that called me and is like, you know, how did your appointment go? And I was crying. I just remember crying and just being like, it went horribly. They're not listening to me. I'm the only one that knows what's going on with my body. Like, the fact that I have a thin uterine lining was like nothing. And the fact that I don't want to be on Clomid was a huge deal. And like, furthermore, this isn't even the doctor that I'm going to see. I just paid $350 to get a referral packet. And I went to Caribou Coffee like next. I was like, I need a cup of coffee. And I go through the line and I'm like, yeah, can I get a caramel mocha? And they're like, do you mean a turtle? And I was just like, right now? Really? Like, this is what you're doing right now? Like, this is not what I need right now. Like, I just need a caramel mocha right now, you know? And so I get to the window, and of course they're like, it's $1 cheaper if you get it in a turtle instead of in a caramel mocha. And I'm like, I really don't care. Just do it. Like,
just give it to me.
Yes.
In an IV now.
Exactly. I'm ready to die because I can't have kids, and I'm pretty sure I'll never have children. So I have coffee. Anyway,
so the latte is the only answer.
Yes, exactly. And I was in my ginormous van, and I just remember feeling so out of place. Like, just like, I did not fit in this world, you know, and just super frustrating to be in this ginormous van through the drive-through. The lady's telling me how to actually order coffee. And I'm like, you have no idea what my day is going like. If you're a barista, I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to offend anyone out there. It's just, that was my personal experience for that day. But
no, I was a barista once. Your barista's your bartender.
That's right. You were. Yes. So I have told many a woe to a barista.
Sure, I've heard them.
Sure. Some of them are really great. That's the sign of a great barista when they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. You know, I'm going to give you extra whipping cream today." You know, when they're like, "Seriously, I'm just a barista." Then it's like, I'll go to the bar down the road, okay?
Now I need to go to my hairdresser and try again.
Right? Yeah.
That's the next step.
Exactly. So the next day, oh, no. Sorry. That evening I get home and my husband, of course, is like, how did it go? You know? And I'm like, horrible. And I tell him this whole thing. And he's like angry. He is so mad. He's like, I want that $350 back. And I'm like, well, I already paid it, so I don't think that's gonna work. And so we open up the packet, like just out of curiosity. And the first appointment to see this gal is gonna be $600, like just straight out of the gate. So without even having any results, we will have paid almost $1,000 just to start this process. And we were just like, we can't even afford to do this. Like, this is just not even gonna work. And then I flip to the next page, which is a whole sheet on BMI and how if your BMI is below a certain number, she won't even work with you. She can work with you on lowering your weight, but she's not even going to start working with you on having a baby until your BMI is below a certain point, which I was above. And I turned to my husband and I was like, do you think that on the phone, when they were telling me that I was going to owe $350 up front, they could have asked my weight and said, we won't work with you until you're below a certain weight, instead of wasting my time and energy and money to go in and do all of this? And then he was really mad. Like, then he was like, I really want our $350 back now, you know? And I remember saying to him and Bridget multiple times that day, I have to be the advocate for my body. Like, I have to take ownership now. None of these doctors know what they're talking about. None of them are listening to me and what I'm saying. And I'm the one that bleeds from it. I'm the one that has the period. I'm the one that ovulates. I'm the one that has these sensations in my body that I'm like, what does that mean? What is that doing? Don't just tell me, oh, it's nothing, when it's never happened before. You know, I'm 26 years old, 27, 28, 29. And none of these things have ever happened to me before, but, oh, it's nothing? Like, no, something's going on. And so the next day I get on the computer and I just type in causes of a thin uterine lining. And there are 3 causes. One is low progesterone. The second one I never remember. And then the third one is using Clomid. So because I already had a thin uterine lining, if this doctor had put me on Clomid, it would have made the problem worse, and I would have gotten pregnant because I would have ovulated, but I would have continued to have miscarriages because my uterine line, the baby would not implant in the uterine lining. And that made me more angry than probably everything else that had come up to this point, because I had told her my problem and she didn't know enough about what she was doing to say, you're right, Clomid would not work in your situation. And that was really when I was like, that's it. I'm done. I'm never going to see another doctor about this issue again. And for the next 1.5 years, I just started studying. I started looking up herbs. I started looking up nutrition. I ended up getting certified as a health coach. And then I ended up taking a hormones class, a hormones apprenticeship that's like 5 months long. And I learned everything that was wrong with my body. There were so many aha moments. You have no idea, where it's like, oh, that's not a problem at all. That random thing that happens every month, that's normal, you know? And I just was struck with this awe of, more women need to know this. More women need to know that they're not weird. There's nothing wrong with their body. It's telling them something. It's doing this to tell them something's wrong and this is what you need to do. You know, even if it's like, you need to exercise more, or you need more carrots, or you need whatever, like, it's telling you something, it's speaking to you. And there are ways to correct these things at home without spending thousands and thousands of dollars. And so that's why I became a health coach. That's why I really decided to start sharing this with other women, and change, and how to change their lifestyle, how to fix their problems. And so like just in the last couple months, so I graduated in August with that from that hormone apprenticeship. I currently have 3 clients. One of them is already pregnant. She got pregnant after 1 month of coaching. And my hormones are radically regulating and getting completely normal, like just within, the 3 to 4 months that I've been implementing my own things. And it's just an amazing thing to be able to help someone else get pregnant, to be able to see my own hormones regulating and that it's working, and that I've seen so many doctors that have not been able to do anything or even explain why they're doing something. And yet in 3 to 4 months, I'm fixing my own thing. And so it's just been an amazing ride. And that's what's brought me here. And that's what my mission is. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Well, like, so I want to touch a little bit more on just I've been there with Nicole through her whole story, pretty much. I mean, I don't think we were as good of friends quite in the beginning to be like TMI dump on everything, but like we are now. And so I've been there. If it's happened to her, I've been there. So like just some the things too, like after you've learned what you've learned, we've gone back and looked at all the signs and symptoms you've had and been able to say, that's what happened. Yeah. This reigns true because that's what, like you kind of touched on that, but even in just like your miscarriages and stuff with your thin uterine lining, about the times you would have miscarried would have been when the uterine lining was so important.
Yes.
So we know that's true, right. Like there's been so much of that where we've been able to look back and just be like,
yes. Well, and even with my very first miscarriage, I hadn't had a positive test at all. I didn't even know I was pregnant until I was halfway through the miscarriage. And I was laying in bed thinking like, this pain, like I've had so much pain. I normally, for a normal period for me, I would take 3 ibuprofen, take a nap, and by the time I got up, all my cramping would be gone. That's normal for me. I was like, I had to go about my day. I took probably 12 to 15 ibuprofen in one day, and it was not working. And I was like, why am I feeling so much pain? And it just hit me like, you have a miscarriage, you're miscarrying. And I grabbed my phone and ran to the bathroom and was Googling, and I hit all the symptoms of a miscarriage. But then explaining that to a doctor,
that's the next thing I was going to touch on was their reaction.
Yeah. Their reaction was totally like, oh, okay. Like they're not going to tell you didn't have a miscarriage, but they don't believe you,
And they don't believe you to the point to take that and proceed further.
Yes, exactly.
Like that's the issue, is it's not their business to believe you or not. It's your symptoms you're having and they need to proceed accordingly.
Absolutely.
And that's what's frustrating.
Absolutely. Yes. So it wasn't until my 3rd miscarriage when I finally got a faint positive that I finally trusted myself and my own body and say, okay, those first 2 were miscarriages, because now I know I was pregnant and I did have a miscarriage, and this miscarriage is just like the previous 2. So I know that's what I did. And that was a learning experience for me, to learn to trust my own body no matter what the doctors are telling me. So yeah, it is exactly that the more I've learned, the more you look back and it's like, okay, now I know what was going on there. So
Yeah. So it's crazy.
it is.
To rehear it all every time, I'm just like, this actually happens. Like,
yes.
There and going through this, like I've Googled a lot of this for with you and with other friends, just going through wondering and asking questions. And it's just like, there's so many forums out there and blog posts and everything of just, what the hell is going on with my body? Just like, why did I do this? I thought I was ovulating and now today I'm having my period, and, and all just complete and total confusion. And it's just like that. A doctor doesn't even know what a normal cycle is.
Right.
You walk in there, they don't even know. Instead, they say, you're in pain, here's the pill.
Right. Yeah.
This will fix it. And it doesn't fix it. It makes everything worse.
Absolutely. Yes. Throws everything off even more.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's been interesting to me too, is you kind of get taught that, like, you've got the, like, 60% of women out there that try to get pregnant, they go off the pill, 2 months later they're pregnant, they get a strong positive pregnancy test, they proceed with everything's normal. And if you don't fall into that box, you're just taught that, well, we don't know what's going on with you, you're just normal, or you're just weird, and you start to think there's something wrong, there's something broken with my body. I don't know what it is, they don't know what it is. And then you start learning all this stuff and you realize, no, my body isn't broken, it's telling me stuff. And then you start watching all these other YouTube videos and forums, like you said, and it's like, oh, I'm not the only one. There's like 30 to 40% of us, however high the infertility rate is at this point. Like, we're all struggling with this, and we're not weird. We're not even broken. Our body is trying to fix something that's wrong, and that can be any one of 100 things that needs to be fixed. But we need to stop looking at it like, well, there's just something wrong with you, and like, we just don't know what it is because it doesn't fit into our box of what the picture is. And I think that's what also irritates me the most, because like, I'm a little more understanding if it happens to me for some reason. It's kind of like, well, it's me. But when I hear about another woman who's going through it, it's like, you don't do this to her too. That's when I get mad. Like, no.
Your mama bear comes out for her.
Exactly. Like, you are not insane, girl. You are right. Like, yeah, it's weird. I should be just as angry that it happened to me, but I'm really not. It's a weird thing. And it's just, no.
It is weird. Well, you're telling yourself, I'm surviving. I'm alive. I'm okay.
Yes.
I can live with this. And that's the other part of us, is like, we are told it's okay to be in pain every day. We're told it's okay to pop 12 ibuprofen for a period every month and go on with life. Right. No, that's not okay. No. That's not normal. And I feel like the other thing I was going to bring up too is I feel like that's the diagnosis of PCOS, and everything you said. It's basically just throwing you in another box saying, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
And and it's not.
Well, actually,
and that makes it okay too. The diagnosis of it all too makes it okay.
Yes.
Like, well, you have PCOS, so everything's fine.
Yes.
And it's like, no, I have an issue. So what do we do to fix it?
Yeah. Yep. So I am actually, that bouncing off of that. The way that you get diagnosed for PCOS is you have to have 2 of 3 symptoms: high androgens, which are testosterone and cortisol, sporadic periods, and then ovary or cysts on your ovaries. Those are the 3. Now, here's the thing: you can have high androgens, so you can have a high amount of testosterone just from working out every single day, which makes you grow facial hair if you have high testosterone, and then that also can cause you to have sporadic periods. So just from exercising every single day, you can be diagnosed with PCOS, but not actually have PCOS. And so,
what is every woman told to do for health?
Exactly. We're all taught, go run your guts out to keep your butt small, and like, no, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. So it's extremely, like, I don't even believe I have PCOS, and I am in the rare camp of, like, if you don't have cysts on your ovaries, then you do not have PCOS. That is my firm belief. And I know they say, well, unless if you've had cysts on your ovaries and had them removed, and then, you're in between 2 cysts kind of thing, then yes, you have PCOS. But if you've never had cysts and you just have facial hair and sporadic periods, no, that's not a diagnosis of PCOS. That's a hormone imbalance that we can fix easily from your own home. So super frustrating that I went for 3 years just saying to myself, well, I have PCOS and there's nothing I can do about it. Maybe God will give me a baby someday, not really knowing what else to do. And that was wasting time, and you kind of end up living with your diagnosis after a while. Like, exactly. Well, I am PCOS instead of, yeah. So that also irritates me, if you can't tell. So
yes, no, I think we label and diagnose way too much instead of looking at the symptoms and finding out the why we're having those side effects, whatever's going wrong. It's just, That's your body acting out, saying something deeper is wrong, something needs to be fixed. It's no different than a teenager breaking out with acne. They're changing, something internally is changing and happening, and saying it's different now, and we're balanced. And then once we balance out, we're fine again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's that whole,
or if we don't, there's still something going on, there's something wrong.
exactly. And then if you
That's
don't, like,
yeah,
you're in this but we accept it. Women into their 30s and 40s have dealt with acne their whole life, and that's not okay.
right.
It can be
Absolutely.
fixed. So I do want to ask too, like, even if you have cysts on your ovaries, you can still correct that at home, right, too? Or is that something
you can, there's some natural remedies for that too. I don't go I don't strongly say, like, you know, you have to do it this way. Like, if you want to go see a doctor and have them surgically removed, that's between you and your doctor. Because they can cause a lot of pain. They obviously cause infertility.
Yes.
So I definitely recommend, like, talking to your doctor about getting them surgically removed, but also coaching with me to make sure that they don't come back, and fixing those slowly over time. Because we can still work with your hormones even if you have PCOS. So it's definitely correctable and able to move forward. So that would be my answer about that. So, but yes, there are some natural things at home you can do to help.
Awesome. Yeah. See, I felt like they didn't even know if you had cysts yet or not. And they just handed you a pamphlet and said, they gave you no hope. And there is a lot of hope out there.
Absolutely.
This is what we're exposed to, how our bodies are detoxing constantly, and the stress we're under, and just everything is plays such a role. And there's so much we can do to change and make it better.
And I have thought too, I've thought back on that appointment many times, obviously, because that's what we do. If I had been that doctor, I would have sat down and I would have said, honey, I think you might have something that's going to be really hard for you to get pregnant through. You can, but this is going to be a really long process, and this isn't going to just be an ultrasound and a surgery. And this is called PCOS, and that means that you probably have cysts on your ovaries, and that's why I want to do an ultrasound. But this is the process of what happens. Instead of, this is what I think you have, call me if you have any questions. You know, that's the difference that I understand the argument that the doctors don't have time and all of that.
But that's the issue.
It is the issue. That is completely the issue.
Yep.
So I feel like even in the realm of them not understanding all of these natural ways, them not understanding that there's hope, there are still ways to break news to people without causing the amount of trauma that caused, you know, and sending them out to their car and then they find out, oh, I'm never gonna have kids, you know. And that's not the way to do that at all.
Yeah. And I'd love to say, oh, well, sorry, Nicole, that was just, you saw a bad doctor. But when we get to my story, I've seen a lot of doctors, and no, this is reality. And I know all of you women out there are shaking your head yes too, because I literally have found one good doctor that I seriously adore. And yeah, it's they're one in a million out there. It's crazy. And that goes back to too, like, the issue is the time that they spend with us, and they don't know, and they don't have the time, and they don't have the time to go research and all of that. Just like that, we're willing to pay for it. Yes. You know, you dropped $350 to go see this doctor, not even knowing what the hell was going to go on. Right. You know, you didn't know what they were going to say, what they're going to do. You're willing to pay for these answers.
Right.
But because of the system and how it is, and
that's nothing.
You have to be qualified to see them. Yeah.
We're paying thousands of dollars for IVF. Thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So yeah, like we are all willing to pay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's slow down and take the time, talk to me, and we, you know, and educate us. You know, we need to know our own body. Just like you said, like, we need to be our own doctor.
Absolutely.
And we can be. This isn't rocket science, you know, like, here I go. My turn to rant. Like, this is something very, very new. We treat it as if tomorrow, if all the medical world went away, we'd all be dead. And it's not true. It's just been in the last, I don't know, my timeline is always mixed up because I don't know, it just does. But I want to say 50 years, but it's been longer than that. But like, you know, it's just been in the last 100 years that we now have the largest hospitals ever in the history. We have this, we have that, and we didn't used to live like that. We used to have one country doctor who went around, and I know some people are going to say the argument of, yeah, well, people died. Well, I'm sorry. Nicole and I are in the generation of the first generation on record to never outlive their parents. And that's death.
Yeah.
That's bad. We've
Yeah.
never had that. And now you're telling me things are better. I'm
Right.
sorry. No, we are in the worst health
And
crisis we've ever been in.
the diseases we're living with, like
Exactly.
diabetes, cancer,
Exactly.
yes, autoimmune diseases. There's no reason. This is not health. This is
No.
not better.
Just because you've got a diagnosis, you're healthy because you know what's wrong with you.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I would rather live to be 35 and die of childbirth, but have lived healthy and a vibrant life than live 70 years with like not being able to do or eat anything because
you can't go hike, you can't go swimming, you can't
What's the
enjoy
point?
cake on your child's first birthday because it's true. We live these lives and we're just like, we're so restricted, and we say we're living and we're not. We're just getting by. We really are. And our children are even worse. My kids are a testament to that. My son. So it's just getting worse, and it's time for a change. Yeah.
Now that we're kind of going.
Yeah, that is a good like intro to my story. So yeah, so I am I deal with children. I call myself a children's health expert. I have 3 kids, and my first son. Oh, I had a miscarriage originally, which I just throw in there too because it was a direct result of my health as well. I can look back and see that now because then my second child was born with a heart condition. We found out at his 20-week fetal appointment that he had tetralogy of flow with an absent pulmonary valve, and that would result in needing immediate heart surgery after birth. And who knows what after that, like that was what we were told when we found out we were having a boy at 20 weeks, bam. And that's when it all started. We had to go to a larger city. We had to drive 5 hours away to get an actual fetal echo because we were in a small town, and get that official diagnosis at the time. And then from there, we had to make some really fast decisions. We ended up moving to to Denver, Colorado, larger city, to get the medical help we needed. It was either that or being flight for life back after and forth after birth, and just craziness. But anyway, he ended up being born. He was able to hold off for 3 weeks before needing his first surgery, which was amazing. Just got that much bigger and stronger, but he just finally was like failing. It was really scary time. Like you could just see, like when he was born, he was doing really well. Like I got to hold him for like 30 seconds before they had to like whisk him away and put him on oxygen, which I didn't even expect, first baby, and I totally full on expected them to whisk him away and for who knows what to happen, so that was good. Like he was doing good. But when he needed that first surgery, I could just totally, like, I went in that day and I just knew something was wrong. We were going home. We weren't allowed to stay with him in the NICU. And I just remember coming back and being like, what is wrong? The nurse wasn't around at the time. I just walked into the room and you could just see something was wrong. He was breathing so heavy and hard and just sleepy. And yeah, so they scheduled a surgery for that next Monday, and all was good. And he did really well for quite a while. And then he ended up, again, just breathing really hard. And I had been introduced to some healthy things. So you have to know this about me. Nicole's just going to laugh her butt off. She loves teasing me about this. But I was not a healthy person at all in any respect of the form. I like made fun of healthy people. I would,
including me.
What?
Including me.
Yep, I did. She told me things like being gluten-free, and I just laughed, and how dyes affect your mood, and I was just like, yeah, washing it down with my 2 liter of Dr. Pepper that day, and going on, like that was my life. And I I had no clue. I was just like, oh, whatever. I'm fine. I've done this for the last, I don't know how old I was at the time, 23, 22. What, we're good. And just completely oblivious to anything. And at the end of my pregnancy with Fritz, I started to be introduced to some things. What about becoming a mom makes you all of a sudden be like, oh my gosh, well, I better do this because it's going to make it better. Like, I have to do everything for my kid. It's changes everything. So I did start to take some different supplements and just be more cautious about things and whatnot. And I always asked, I was like, why is this my kid? Why did he have a heart problem? Because neither one of our sides of the family had anything like this. We had some diabetes in our, but in older people and just, normal things, but nothing like this. And, anyway, through that, right after his first heart surgery, he, was getting closer again. And at night, I would get woken up from the alarms at home because he was still wearing a pulse ox and stuff because he wasn't still on oxygen. He was on oxygen quite a bit, off and on, through that period. And I'd get him off of it and he'd have to go back on it. And the altitude didn't help in Denver at all. But he was getting closer to needing another surgery, they thought, and just breathing really rapidly. And I started changing some things in my diet a little bit more drastically. I started giving him some other food that just made a huge change. Like, he went from breathing rapidly, being all wonky on the growth chart, to gaining weight like in triple amounts. I have his growth chart. I should actually have pulled that up. I didn't think about that. I'll have to show it on a future podcast or YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube, because you could actually see it. Ha! But he just literally, like, his growth chart was going straight down and he spiked way back up. I mean, granted, he wasn't in the 50th percentile, but growth chart's another rant for another day. If you're in the 50th percentile and shaped like my son, that's also an issue. But anyway, so it just, I started to realize, like, oh my gosh, maybe there's something to this. I had seen some changes in my pregnancy within like 2 weeks of him being born, and then this was happening, and it actually ended up delaying a heart surgery for a little while, not forever. But when he was born with that missing valve, he ended up having a humongo, his right pulmonary artery. When he was born, it was literally bigger than his heart. Like, you could just see it on the x-ray. It was just like spanning his whole chest. And then as time went on, it would get smaller and smaller, but it's still, even at like a year old, it looked like he had 2 hearts in there. I mean, it was just huge. And so, I mean, you just had some anatomy issues that all weren't, needed to be taken care of. So he had his second heart surgery in February. And then he had another one at 11 months. And that one, we ended up having a wonderful 3-month stay in the hospital and never getting off the breathing tube. He just constantly was extubated, intubated, extubated, intubated. And for whatever reason, they are very shy from putting a trach into an infant and toddlers. I don't know why. If you're an adult, if you're intubated and extubated more than once or twice, even in a week, they will give you a trach. But for toddlers, they won't do that, which is very frustrating to me because I always find things out later, like at the time I had no idea what the alternative was to a breathing tube. That's all I knew was they come out of heart surgery. He has a breathing tube down his neck, and what do you do? What replaces that? And so, later on you find out, like, well, because he was intubated and extubated so many times, they could have damaged vocal cords. Like, he could have horrible trouble being able to speak and all of this. And I'm like, I would have much rather you just said he needs a trach. It may be a hassle later. It may be calling it too soon, but over his voice, it was very frustrating to me after I found this out. And of course, it's always after the fact. I don't, like, everything I've learned and known to be true is, again, learning it after the fact and looking back going, why? That makes no sense. So it doesn't add up. Why didn't we do it this way? And that was one of them. It was super frustrating. But anyway, so they put the trach in, the ventilator in, and he was fine. we got out about a month later, I think, all said and done, ended up having in-home nursing at home for a while and all of that. And I just kept, at that point, I was like, you know, it had been a little over a year's worth of like changing things at home, changing out cleaners and chemicals and, you know, all these different things, telling other people about it and just like getting feedback and research. And we had seen leaps and bounds. I myself had leaps and bounds of changes. I was beginning to feel better than I ever had, even clear back in high school. And I did physically labor demanding jobs in high school. And I was feeling better than that even, you know, and at this time I was having my second baby in the hospital with a kid on a trach and a ventilator, very stressful time. And I felt amazing. You know, I'm the one like beep bopping around the hospital, just like, how's it going, guys? You know, and everybody else is like, what? You know, I went on like a 5-6 mile hike 2 weeks before my daughter was born, and we came back to the hospital that day and the doctor was like, oh, what'd you guys do today on your Sunday afternoon? Like, well, we went hiking. And doctor's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm great. So, you know, it was everything was just going great. And so we had been given an estimated time for Fritz to be on this trach and a ventilator for, you know, at least a year, if not longer. And at home, I just kept working with him. I was with him all the time. Even though we had in-home nursing, there was very few times I ever left. It was wonderful at night, let me tell you, though, because false alarms all night long with a newborn baby, that was a blessing and a half. But I knew my kid. I knew what he could tolerate. I knew what he couldn't. I knew where he was struggling. He was on a G-tube too. Again, I was told that was no questions asked. You had to get a G-tube with a trach because when they put it in the trach, it could harm his eating abilities. And looking back now, I would have done that differently. I would have said, well, let's see if that's what happens before we do this. But life, right? So I was struggling with that because he quit eating. Like, you know, he was getting full bolus feeds overnight, a couple times during the day, and you could just see the love of food going out of him. I actually remember talking to Nicole and telling her this, just like, he just won't eat. He doesn't love to eat anymore. You know, I set him up to the table, I put him, and he just like stares at his food and wants to get down. And I'm like, no, you have to eat, you know? I did not want to go through that, him not knowing how to eat. And he had the full capabilities. He had been cleared by swallow studies and everything to be able to do this. There was no reason for this. So I took matters into my own hands and I started playing with his feeding times and backing off and, you know, all of that, and just made some executive decisions. I became his advocate. And within a few weeks, I got him completely off of feeding tubes or the G-tube feeds. And I was in conversation with his doctor about it. He told me to go slow, and of course I didn't listen. And I just proceeded. And within weeks, he was completely off feeds and eating like a normal, happy 1.5-year-old like should be for him. And it was amazing. Like all of a sudden the G-tube was completely irrelevant. He had it put in what would have been the end of July. By November, I was begging I'm not going to say it right, the gastronomic doctor to pull that thing out, or I was going to, because it just didn't need to be there. I mean, seriously, a 1.5-year-old running around the house with a hole in his gut. Hello. You know, it's just a pain. Plus he's already like on this 5-foot leash from the ventilator. You know, it's just, we don't need to be cleaning this. It's a hazard. We're in cold and flu season. Just so many things. Like, it's completely irrelevant. So finally got that taken care of, and he just, amazing doctors, you know, at this point. And, you know, he's constantly was put on meds. I was backing him off his meds constantly because everything they were telling me about, well, he has reflux. He had no signs of reflux. Well, it's preventative. Keep him on it because you don't want to deal with reflux if he has it. Well, let's find out if he has it first, you know? And so I'd back him off all his meds and he was fine. And asthma, he has asthma. You have to keep him on this. Every kid who's on a trach and a ventilator has asthma. Well, do you know that, or do you just stick them on medications? And so I backed him off all of his asthma medications, and, you know, and he's just this thriving kid. And so we go into the doctor, it's okay, what meds is he on? And, you know, they're sitting there ready to be there for 30 minutes. And I'm like, none. And they're like, none at all? Nope. Do you do any home remedies? Nope. We're just, we go along with life. We do what we need to do for what we need to do. And, it's just so amazing. So anyway, he ended up getting off the ventilator 9 months after it being put in, because the doctors were skittish. They wouldn't take his actual trach out until a year. And then for whatever reason, his trach site never closed up, and he just actually got that closed up. What's that, October? So he got that closed up, and he is just, you'd never know it. I mean, he's take his shirt off, you can see all the scars. You'd never know it. He's this perfect 3-year-old running around. Thankfully has no vocal issues. Actually, he's got a very strong voice box because he would speak over the ventilator, so he strained his vocal cords. And he's a very loud 3-year-old, but it's just amazing. And through changing everything and doing everything, I have 2 other pregnancies. I've had 4 pregnancies in 3 years. I am healthier, more energetic, and anything that I've ever been. I mean, I have my days. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a mom, but I would have never dreamed. Like, I just remember being 18, like, I have to get up, I have to go to work today. And it's nothing like that. I've been up all night with kids, and I get up and go. And I know when I'm thirsty. I know when I need to eat something. I know what my body's saying, what I need. And I know when to say no, like, hey, no, I need a break. And my 2 girls are healthy as kids. We've only been sick with mild colds that last a couple days. I don't think my kids have, maybe Millie had the flu once, and that was it. Like, it's been awesome. So yeah, just crazy. I think that's kind of it. There's a lot. And I know we'll get into more throughout our podcast as we talk on certain subjects and topics, but yeah, that's my story. And that's why I do what I do, because I am so sick, and I do what Nicole does. I still do it. I'm not going to lie. I go to the doctor and I hear things and I'm like, well, okay, I should, in the back of my mind, I'm telling myself, you should probably speak up about that and get a little testy. And I'm like, well, it's fine. He's okay. And then, but I hear somebody else and I'm like freaking out, and it's been amazing. I've been able to touch so many lives and change so many families. And what I love is seeing kids thrive, because in Frizz's situation, he would not be where he is. In full on honesty, he would still be on a trach and a ventilator. At 3 years old, he would still be on a 5-foot leash. And that's what I call it, because that's what it is. If you've ever seen a toddler try to learn to walk and crawl on one of those things, it's a literal leash. They can't do anything. And instead, I took away everything that was not completely unnecessary, adding more toxins into his body. There's a time and a place for medication. It's going to save your life, but it's not prevention. It just completely adds to all the toxins in our environments already, and hampers all of that. And yeah, so
I remember when you were talking about the asthma medication, and my dad has asthma. And I remember the biggest thing about asthma medication is you use it when you need it, because the more that you use it, you become intolerant to it. And that's why the longer that you have asthma, the bigger that the thing gets, because they need more and more and more. And I remember you were already looking into it, but I was like, yeah, they shouldn't be putting him on that unless they know he has asthma. Like, if he does have asthma, and you're just giving it to him willy-nilly, it's still going to be bad for him, because you're still creating an immunity to it, and it's crazy. And then there's side effects to all these meds too. Like, we all know that there's side effects. We shouldn't just be being put on stuff because we might have, we don't take cold medicine because we might have a cold,
Right. Yeah. Well, and that was one thing too that scared me, honestly. I can't remember now if it was his reflux medication or the asthma medication. I want to say it was the reflux medication, because I knew I had heard many stories of people who were in their like 40s and 50s who had been on asthma medication their whole life, and now they're like seriously sick simply because of their asthma medication. I had heard stories like that.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it was his reflux med. I asked the doctor repeatedly, what are the side effects? It's one thing to have reflux, and especially if it's in a mild form, that's fine. You can live with that. And there are very natural things to do to heal that. and calm it down and everything, but you can live with that. What made me so mad was he looked me in the eye twice at our doctor's appointment and said, there are no side effects to this medication. Which now I know, never believe that about any drug, any food, any herbal remedy. Like there's some kind of a side effect, good or bad, you know.
Yeah.
Water has a side effect of hydration. Like there's a side effect to everything we do, you know. And I went home and I Googled it. And one of them was mental issues. Like it would mess with your brain. Like they have been proven that it started to hamper kids in their thinking abilities. And it made me so mad. I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. Like no side effects. We're just going to fry my kid's brain.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
That was literally how I felt. And I encourage everyone, go Google your medications right now. Is what you're dealing with better or worse than the side effects? Because some of the side effects, even, and you know, talk about it a little bit, like even in antibiotics, some of the side effects is death. And simply your symptoms of starting to take it are dizziness and a fever. And if you finish the antibiotics, will result in death, especially if you're already ill. Your body can't fight both. And I'm sorry, it's better to run the course of whatever, you know, let your body fight it. And there are so many things. I dealt with Fritz on, he supposedly had a thrush infection on his throat. I couldn't see it. Thrush is very visual if you go Google a picture of it, but he had a scope done and this is what I was told he had, and a surgery was delayed for it. And he was given a antifungal because thrush is a fungus in your mouth. And I was like, there's no way. So I did all my research and whatever, and I absolutely refused to give him that antifungal. And I had asked the doctor about it in the hospital. I was like, well, how do I know this is gone if I can't see that in his throat? Like, how do I know to bring him back for his surgery again? I mean, at the time we've moved away and we were driving for 3-4 hours for the surgery. I'm like, I don't want to come back and it's still there. And she goes to me, oh, this will more than take care of it. You won't even know it's there anymore. I was like, okay, whatever. So I go home, do my research, and like I said, I absolutely refused to give this to him. And I found out that there have been studies done with the exact antifungal that he was given, and coconut oil in this study beat out this antifungal. And I don't even want to know what the side effects were to the antifungal.
Didn't you bring that up to her and she specifically said no home remedies will help with this?
So yes, so then I started making phone calls. This is the next day. You know, I'm working very quickly on this, and because you're supposed to be giving a antifungal, you know, every day, don't miss your dose, right? And so I call back and I get a hold of the PA, and she said, oh no, his infection is so bad, it's way beyond any home remedies. And I was like, it just like fueled my fire, of course, because of who I am. And I was like, I'm going to show you. Oh, I'm done. Like, again, this is not a life-threatening thing. It, you know, it wasn't visible. Thrush moves forward. It wasn't visible anywhere in his mouth. So I already knew it wasn't bad. You know, if it was there, it was very mild in the back of his throat, which couldn't happen because he had a trach. So granted, more moisture is going to gather back there than you and I, because he's got another hole there. But if it was as bad as they were saying, it would have come forward into the mouth. So I called my pediatrician and I plead the same way, like, tell me what's going on here. And of course they can't really help me because they didn't see the pictures. They weren't there. They're not going to overrule another doctor. And she's like, but you're the mom and you know your kid, you do what's best. I love my pediatrician. And it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this. So I never went and got that prescription filled. And I gave him coconut oil and absolutely everything I cooked. I just gobbed it on there. I might have tried to make him eat it a couple times. I don't know. I make them a shake at night. I put it in that. I was cooking with it. I found a tea that they could drink that was antifungal. Cinnamon is antifungal, like all the things. Like I was doing them. And I took him back for his surgery. And I made sure to ask her, so how was his thrush? Oh, it was absolutely gone. Nothing there. And she walked off. And I was just like, yep, you don't know what I did, but it's so frustrating. And I'm kidding you not. If you look up the side effects for those medications, it's insane. And here we go and they're harming us. Coconut oil does not harm you. It helps you. It detoxes you. It helps you. It helped him so in so many more ways than just his thrush issue. You know, it's so many ways. You know, you always benefit from eating healthy no matter what. You know, even, you know, it's even, we talk about, you know, organic versus not. I always say just eat it. You know, if you can't afford organic, just eat it. It's gonna help you more than the Snickers, because that's what people do.
Yes.
They go buy a Snickers because, well, the strawberries aren't organic, so what do I do? You know, and it's just eat it.
Absolutely.
And that it's just insane. It's just so crazy how confused we are, and we have no way to even start listening to our bodies and know what to even do. Our intuition as mothers is completely pounded so far into the dirt. We can't even find it. We kind of freak out when we say, listen to your intuition. And we're like, okay.
Well, and we're taught that when we have infertility problems, you know,
Yep,
we're taught that
exactly.
when we have period problems and we're like, something's wrong. Well, no, nothing's wrong with your body. You don't know what you're talking about. And then you have kids and it's like, well, something's wrong with them. No, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like, it's like this multiple layer effect. And, you know, you and I have both found that the more that we listen, the more we see and the more we realize.
Amplified.
Yeah.
It just keeps getting, I mean, we still doubt ourselves because of what we're told all around us. But yet we're honestly not very far into this either, though. We've, you know, in comparison to 80 years of, you know, our last whatever, but like it just keeps getting, we keep getting more and more confident. We see signs so much sooner, like everything. It's just completely crazy. Even down to my kids. I was going to tell that story too. Fritz, so he was fairly very healthy as a baby, getting, you know, I nursed him, all that kind of stuff, and I started to feed him baby food, and he refused it. Started giving him real food, and he ate it.
Yeah.
You know, he knew, like, I had made very little changes at that time, but they were healthier than what had been, and his body knew. And still to this day, I mean, yeah, we eat out or go get some fries or whatever, my kids will eat them, but very, very common, they will eat none of them. They will leave half of them. And, you know, I mean, about the only thing they die over is mac and cheese. But, you know, like, it's just crazy to me. Like, that's what we're not building up in our kids. Instead, we're, oh, you want this. And we just constantly give it to them and give it to them, when if you give them a sweet potato every day, they're going to eat it, you know? And when you teach them, okay, you need to calm down, you're angry, let's go outside, let's breathe deep, all these things that we are just told, no, suck it up, let's keep going. Nope, let's go. We got to keep going. We got to go to soccer practice. Nope, let's keep going. We got to go. Nope, let's go. Okay, it's bedtime. Shut everything off. No, that's not how it works.
Right.
It's not how it works at all. And it's pushed so far down.
So while you were talking, I actually pulled up the picture of Fritz, when he was like, he looked like a refugee.
Oh,
and
yes.
when you started feeding him, people won't be able to see it on the podcast, but are you okay with me sharing?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So you'll be able to see this if you're watching it on YouTube. Share screen. So this is Fritz when he was, I'll let you talk if you want. Actually, you know it better than I do.
Yeah, I know, that's okay. These are two actually totally random pictures because, again, back then I knew nothing. You know, I was just kind of doing what I thought a good mom should do, right? Trying to be that Pinterest perfect mom and do all the things. And so the first picture is of him in the Target shopping cart, and he was sitting in the cart for the first time, which is a miracle because he was very old. It doesn't look like it, but I think he was over 6 months for sure. And not sitting up yet, not, you know, anything. I think he was closer to 9, actually, now that I think about it. And just a very big milestone. He got to sit in the cart. And so I take a picture, of course. Well, literally 2 weeks later, we're getting ready to leave again. And you know how you throw your kid? I know you moms will know what I'm talking about. You throw your kid in the car seat or throw him in the car. And, you know, as you're lifting that infant seat over, you look at your kid. And for whatever reason, you see them every time. And this time when I threw him over, I'm like, whoa, he's changed. He grew. And so I took a picture and, like, boy, he's getting so big, whatever. And then it was just like, I had posted the shopping cart picture on Facebook. And then, so that was one of my last posts, and that showed up with this. And it was just like, whoa, hold on. Just like, what? I mean, yeah, like Nicole said, you can't see this on our podcast, but if you're check out YouTube. We both have YouTube channels. And you can just see in the first picture, his cheeks are all sunken in. And I mean, it looks like he's sucking his cheeks in to make a fish face. He's not. No, that is his smile, guys.
His arms, like you look at his arms, and even
arms
his arms are like so
yep.
skinny.
Well, even the thickness of his head. And again, like, a growth chart is a huge pet peeve of mine because it has been so modified to I don't know whether I'm not good with words. You'll learn this about me. Like, I stutter a lot. But to the obesity, like the growth chart has grown with obesity in our world. And so if you're like me, I'm 5'7", very skinny. That's my genetics. That's the way my family is. And then you have kids. And at the time, my husband was the same way. And so we had very tiny kids and, scrawny, thin as a rail. Well, they're like in death row on the growth chart, like they're like, this isn't possible, but they're alive and well, but the one thing I do agree with the growth chart is the curve. And as long as your child is following his or her own curve, that is when it's okay. Because that means they're growing appropriately. And the head, look at his head circumferences in that picture. Like, it grew so much. And that's where all the good fats are, and the brain development and growing. And I mean, his head just expanded even. I mean, it's just.
You can even see it in his eyes. Like,
yeah.
His like in the first one, he looks happy because he's like, yeah, mom, but in the second one, he's like, I'm satisfied, I'm fed, I'm happy, and
yep.
I remember you showing these to me and just being like, look at
his hair. Look how thin it is in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Well, and didn't you say too that he you took him into a thrift store and the gal was like, who's this little one? Because she didn't recognize him. I don't know if you remember that. And she was like,
I don't remember that.
This is my son. And she was like, oh, like, he looks that different, and
yeah, I kind of remember that a little bit. Yeah, mom brain over here, but Nicole's always reminding me of things.
It's been awesome that we've been able to do these journeys together, and it's also been cool that we've been able to come back and talk to each other and be like, this is what I'm thinking, and this is what the doctor says, and the other one's like, no, you're right, you're totally right.
Well, we amplify that. We're like, yeah, because remember this too.
Yeah. And there's been so many times where you forget your own story or and you forget what's going on, and it's like, that's right, I forgot about that, and
because you repress it because you're not supposed to think of anything of it.
Yeah, exactly that, going back to that intuition. So it's been awesome. There have been times where it's like, yeah, I remember listening. We use the Voxer app a lot, which it basically means you leave each other voice messages and you can listen. And they'll be like, one of us will be like, I remember listening to that on the way to this doctor's appointment, and we look up the date and it's like, so it was this day, and we both know because it was on our calendar, and it's awesome. It's been a great journey to be able to do it together.
Yeah, it has, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know that this has gone kind of long, so I think that's everything that each of us wanted to share, unless you had anything else you wanted to add, Bridget.
No, that's the generals of our story. Keep listening, and they'll get more detailed and maybe a more focused too for some.
Yes. Our goal is definitely to keep them shorter. So.
Yes, our goal is around 15-20 minutes, maybe under 30 for sure.
Yes,
I know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But we figured with the story ones, we wanted to be complete and not limit ourselves. So everything we know, almost, as far as our stories go. So anyway, all right.
And we'd love to hear your stories too. If you feel like any of this has related to you and you're like, oh my gosh, that's my life. That's, I'm trying to get pregnant. I have a kid who I can't get out of the NICU, whatever it is, I can't get him off a medication, whatever it is. And you relate to this, or you're just flat out confused. You're just like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
Reach out to us, either one of us. We are happy to help. We work together a little bit too. So, if one of us doesn't know, we will find the answer for you, or find someone who does. We have a great network in other coaches as well, in many subjects. So we will definitely find you that answer. We do this to help people. Like, we've both been there where you literally feel helpless,
Mm-hmm.
and
Absolutely.
it's not the way we're supposed to be. You can't live like that. You can't live a God glorifying life like that. You can't sit
Absolutely.
there wondering. So
Absolutely.
definitely reach out to us. You can shoot us both emails by going to our websites that we mentioned at the beginning of the call on our intro thingy. Should be on there, and you can just just share your story with us too. We'd love to hear and get you
Or
where you
if
need to be.
you're on my website and you need to get hold of Bridget, you can always drop me an email too, and I can send you her info, and vice versa. So
Yep.
there's always that option. We have many ways of getting in contact with each other, and we will
Yep.
share them with you.
Yep, for sure. So yeah. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this, and we're not too awfully boring or rambly or ranty or all the things, and that you'll keep listening, and look forward to our next podcast next week. Or, well, every other week. We're going to do every other week right now for a while. See how it goes.
Yes.
But yeah, so.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll be back in 2 weeks, and have a happy Black Friday.
Yeah.
Hopefully you find some good deals, or found some good deals,
Yeah.
depending on which end you're on that. So,
all right. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on today's podcast.
If you'd like to know more about our programs or watch the podcast in video form, you can visit our websites,
where we also share links and resources concerning the different topics that we have discussed.
Check me out at www.nicolehegstead.com.
And check me out at www.bridgetmay.com. See you next time.